Hey everybody, Mark Kelly and Mr. Saltwater Tank. It's time for the Midday Monday question and answer session. Got to give a shout out to my Canadian followers. Apparently it's the Canadian Thanksgiving up there in Canada. So go Canada, eh? Hope you all are enjoying your time off. Hopefully you are actually off, enjoying a little bit of a break. Before we get started today, I want to give you two important announcements. First of all, I'm going to be traveling around this fall at some great locations. First of all, in October 25th, I will be at Reef-a-Palooza in Costa Mesa, California, also known as Orange County, California. I've heard lots of great things about the Reef-a-Palooza event. Decided it's time that I go and show up. While I'm there on Saturday the 25th, I'll be talking at the Apex Users Meetup Group, and then I'll be sitting at the Real Reef Rock booth for 2 hours in the afternoon answering your questions. So if you're in the Southern California area, you probably know about Reef-a-Palooza. If not, come on out to Costa Mesa, California at the Orange County Fairgrounds, October 25th and 26th. I'll be there on the 25th, would love to meet you. And I heard just again great things about the event. Sounds like it's definitely worth your time. Next weekend, on November 1st, I will be in Phoenix, Arizona, speaking at the Desert Frag Swap. It's going to be happening again there in the Valley of the Sun. That's November 1st, that's Saturday. And then the next weekend, I'll be in Birmingham, Alabama, back down here in the Southeastern Conference, baby. Speaking in Reef Life Aquariums. That's an aquarium store in the Birmingham area. Again, Reef Life is the name of the store. I'll be there doing an all-day event on November 8th. So lots of great events coming up here throughout this fall. We'd love to see you all. We'd love to meet you in person, because when it's just me here talking, I'm talking to the camera. It goes out there in the world. Don't know who is out there listening on the other end. So we'd love to meet you. Come out for those events. Second of all, I want to let you know my virtual tank build program. That's my 10-week intensive group coaching program. Is ending tomorrow night. That's Tuesday. There's a link, www.mrsaltwatertank.com/virtual tank build. Adding a couple new bonuses to the program this time around. I'm giving everyone who's in the program a 30-minute one-on-one call with me. During the call, we can talk about your tank build, talk about anything else you might have a question about. It's just you and me on the phone, making sure that you're getting your tank set up properly, or if you already have your tank set up, making sure that you've got the right gear and then you're on the right track. And to make sure you have continuing success with your tank, everyone who's in the program, I'm going to be checking in on you quarterly with another 30-minute call. Make sure everything's going well, dealing with any bumps in the road that you might encounter. Anyone who's run a saltwater tank knows that getting it set up is one thing, getting it going, maintaining it over the long term is another. So I'll be doing quarterly check-ins with those of you that are in the program. Again, the link again, mrsaltwatertank.com/virtual tank build. All right, with that two things out of the way, let's dive right into the question and answers here. First question comes from Jason. Jason says, Mark, I know you have a book about it, but I'm going to be moving my tank soon. My current 75-gallon tank and the 30-gallon sump is coming with them. Good job on keeping the tank, Jason. You don't want to upgrade? Why not? You're tearing it all down. Now's the perfect time to do it. Can I take the fish, corals, and 90% out of the water and transport the tank with a sand bed in place? You could, and I don't recommend it, as I talk about in the Moving and Upgrading book. Tanks are made to hold a lot of weight. Even small tanks like your 75-gallon, that thing loaded up is going to weigh several hundred pounds. However, keeping the sand in there, moving it, those tanks are not made to hold things in motion. There's new forces that can come on the tank, increased forces if you go to move it, even with just the sand and a little bit of water in there. Don't recommend it. Go ahead and take that sand out. I recommend you take the sand out anyway, as I talk about in the Moving and Upgrading guide. Go ahead and take it out, take all the sand out, restart the sand, get a new sand bed, and then go from there. It's going to be easier to move the tank. It's going to be safer on you. Look, the last thing you want to do is get the tank set up again, and then it starts to leak. Yeah, that would be a major pain in the butt. Like, moving a tank to begin with is not a lot of fun. It takes a lot of time, longer than you think. If you get everything set back up again, put your plumbing back together, then it starts leaking, you're really going to be bummed. Don't recommend it, Jason. Take all the sand out. Take everything out of your tank before you move it. Very important. All right. Raul writes in. Raul says, I know you said that serpent and brittle starfish are safe, but I forgot to ask, will they eat my snails and other cleanup crew? The answer to that is no, Raul. Starfish, brittle starfish, serpent starfish are members of your cleanup crew. They're not going to go eat something unless it's dead or just about dead. Like it's dying, it's on its very last legs. Brittle starfish, serpent starfish are not predators. If you see them eating a fish that's dying, Look, that doesn't mean they took down the fish. They cannot grab onto a healthy fish and hold on to the thing long enough to kill it. That fish is likely just about dead, and then they were able to get a hold of it, then they might start trying to eat it. So no, they're not going to eat your snails, other cleanup crew, and remember, those starfish are not going to take down healthy fish. They're not predators. Great question though. A lot of people mess that one up. Ivan wants to know, start a new tank build, 120 gallon, nice size Ivan, like the 120 gallon size, mostly SPS and LPS and other corals, and I'm contemplating reactors. Do biopellet reactors really make a noticeable improvement in the tank's health? All right, Ivan, here's one of those things that I see a lot when it comes to saltwater tanks. People say, oh, I'm not doing well with my tank. And someone else will say, oh, just throw a biopellet reactor. Like somehow these biopellet reactors are this magic silver bullet that once you put them on your tank, everything is cured. Here's the thing, Ivan. I put on biopellet reactors on tank once I notice something is going on with the tank. For example, we have a nutrient problem, or the person wants to jump into carbon dosing, then I'll put it in. And also I put them on the tank with the understanding that some things work on certain tanks and some things don't work on other tanks. I would be lying if I sat up here and said, sure, you put on a biopellet reactor in your tank, everything is going to go great. I've had people that have done biopellet reactors, things didn't go so great. Other people, like my client here in town, he's got a 90 gallon tank, it's killing it on a biopellet reactor. Does that mean if you put it on your tank, is your tank going to do well? It's hard to know. Overall, sure, they can help things, but keep in mind too that a lot of people will put a biopellet reactor on a tank that doesn't have a lot of bio load, doesn't have a nutrient problem, and they're like, it didn't do much. It's like, well, yeah, duh, because there's not much for it to do anything with. Biopellets need nutrients to grow, to bacteria. If you're putting it in a healthy tank that's doing well, it might not, the biopellets might not have what they need to grow. You're not going to see any noticeable improvement. So I'll put the biopellet reactor on your tank if you're having an issue with nutrients or you wanted to try carbon dosing. At that point, it's going to be a little bit of a shot in the dark to see, is it going to make a difference? You got to watch your tank, see how it reacts, and go from there. All right. This person, Corey is from Charlotte, North Carolina. I got to go over to North Carolina next month to drop in on a tank that someone wants me to build. All right. Says, I'm just starting to stock my tank and want an anemone, specifically a bubble tip anemone. I found a rare color form I just fell in love with called the Martian nipples. Yikes. I asked my local fish store if they could find one, but they haven't even heard of it. So I want one, and looks like it's an online thing, but I've heard that NEMs are poor shippers. Is this true? How can I make sure my money isn't wasted on a beautiful but dead anemone? All right, there's a photo here of this anemone. Corey, what you're looking at there just looks like any old green bubble tip anemone to me. Martian nipples. A lot of people call these rainbow bubble tips. Like there's all these kind of fun marketing names, common names of these things. Looking at it, that's a straight up green bubble tip anemone. Maybe it's got a little more orangish, maybe a little bit of red on the tips there on the bubbles. There's nothing that doesn't jump out at me as anything special. Can you get an anemone online and have lots of success? Yeah, every single anemone I've had came from an online store. And I didn't have one here locally to get it from, so I shipped them all in. They've done well. Part of it is going to be buying from a place that has a good reputation online, that does overnight shipping, that actually packs the anemone well and that the animal is healthy before they ship it. Now I realize, Corey, that you can't see that anemone, you're buying it online. You can't see it to pick it out before they ship it. This is where you have to trust a retailer and trust that they're going to send you a good specimen. Also keep in mind, the specimen will likely come in looking a little bit stressed. It's been in a bag for maybe 24 hours in the dark. It's been bouncing around. Maybe it got a little cold, a little hot. It's probably going to look a little stressed when it comes out of the bag. Don't worry, that's partly just how it goes with anything that you're shipping. Acclimate it gently, maybe drip it for 20, no more than 30 minutes. Put it in your tank and then give it time to settle in. Don't be surprised again if for Corey for 2 days it's sitting there, it doesn't look so well. It's not inflating, it's wandering around your tank. It's trying to get home, it's trying to get used to its new home. So you have to let it kind of work itself in. If it's a strong specimen and your tank's set up right for anemones, then it should do well. Hopefully you get a good specimen, Corey. Hopefully that works. Again, what you're looking at there looks like any old green bubble tip anemone. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wouldn't go chasing some crazy name and let someone take advantage of you by charging some crazy premium just because they give an interesting name like Martian nipples. How does anyone actually know what Martian nipples look like anyway? Unless you've been abducted by an alien, which might have happened for those of you in New Mexico. Probably not so much there in North Carolina, Corey. All right, next question comes from Todd. Todd says, I'm a newly subscribed follower in my second year of my new 125-gallon tank. I think your advice is spot on. Hey, thanks, Todd, for the nod. Glad to hear your tank is doing well. I've diagnosed algae on my live rock, corals, and sand bed. Happens a lot with people, especially as they're just getting their tank started. I battled this for over a month and I've lost some corals. The fish are fine. I've done 3 days of darkness, increased my cleanup crew, changed my RODI filters for makeup water, changed our T5 bulbs, cleaned the sump, scrubbed and siphoned off as much algae as possible. 30-gallon water change was what I used to do once a month. Now doing it twice a month. Phosphates and nitrates are near zero. Recently read to take out the live rock and spray a little hydrogen peroxide on the rocks, let it sit for a few minutes, scrub, rinse well, and put it back in the tank. This worked great, but I have a few large pieces of rock with corals encrusted on them and fully attached. My question is this okay, this being the hydrogen peroxide spraying on? What should I do with these pieces of rock with corals, with the algae on them, and on the sand bed? All right, Todd, the stuff on the sand bed is usually pretty easy to manage. You can just siphon that off when you do a water change. If it's hair algae that's coming in big mats, you can probably just grab it with your hand and get it out of there. I talk about that in the algae guide. One of the first things you want to do is try to remove as much algae as possible because you got to get those nutrients out. If you start killing the algae that's in there and then it starts dying, it can lead to more nutrients. So go ahead and remove all that you can manually. Again, the sand bed should be a pretty easy thing to do there. Now, as far as the algae on the rock, I would still try to scrub it in the tank. Get in there with a siphon hose, scrub it with a stiff brush, being careful to get around your corals. If you want to take the rock out and spray it with some hydrogen peroxide, it can work. Certain corals are more sensitive to hydrogen peroxide than others. For example, acros usually don't tolerate hydrogen peroxide very well. Hydrogen peroxide, or speaking about hydrogen peroxide, I have to give a shout out to my friend Just Incredible up there at Reef Gen. The guy knows a lot about hydrogen peroxide. I heard him give a talk on it while I was in Nebraska Aquatics last month. So can it work? Yes. Take Carol. Yeah, just take Carol, Todd. I don't know who Carol is, but hey, just take her. So Todd, take care. If you're going to use the hydrogen peroxide, you should be able to just lightly kind of mask off, cover the coral with your hands, spray the hydrogen peroxide on there, let it soak into the algae for a couple minutes, put it back in your tank. This is pretty an advanced thing. If you don't know what you're doing, Todd's been doing this for 2 years. Sounds like he's got his feet underneath him. If you're new to this dealing with algae thing, I don't recommend you just jump straight into hydrogen peroxide because you can certainly screw it up. But Todd, to answer your question, yes, you can spray it a little bit. If you get a little bit of hydrogen peroxide on the corals, shouldn't hurt. You should be able to just cover the corals, spray it on the algae, let it sit, and then go from there. Of course, once it dies off, make sure you scrub it off again. Get those nutrients off the rock before you put them back in your tank. Great question, Todd. Thanks for the nod as well. All right, Corey from Connecticut. I don't know what comes to mind when I think about Connecticut, but hey, Corey from Connecticut has a question about introducing tangs to a tank. Says, I've never had any success introducing more than one at a time to a tank, but everyone always tells me to start with a sailfin tang, which they say is the least dominant or aggressive species, and go up from there. Every time I've done the sailfin tang ends up bullying any other fish. Bear with this email here. I've done that. The sailfin ends up bullying the time I put in the tank, and they both end up getting it from the stress and dying. I'm assuming it being ick. By the way, a tank is 180 gallons with 150 pounds of live rock corals. Okay, how do you introduce multiple tangs to a tank? All right, Corey, a lot of this has to do with types of tangs, and whoever told you that a sailfin tang is the least dominant or aggressive, that sounds like some advice for Terrible Advice Tuesday. Sailfin tangs are not necessarily the least dominant or aggressive. If I had to classify tangs in dominance, I would pick the coli tang, also called bristle-tooth tangs. Those usually don't bother other tangs. Certainly, remember, we're dealing with animals. Just because one has been a great citizen doesn't mean that another one will. Sailfins have a tendency to be mean, especially if you put them in the tank alone. Tangs, especially tangs in the same family, they don't like other tangs that look like them. This is why if you put in a yellow tang and you decide then you want a purple tang, well, purple tang, yellow tangs are both zebrasoma tangs. You put them in your tank, they say, who the hell are you? And why are you here? And the other one says, well, I'm new here and I don't like the way you look. And then they can fight. So Corey, if you want to do this, first sounds like you've had an ick outbreak. Make sure you quarantine everything. I'm big on that. I got fried on that before by not doing it. Yes, I wrote a book on it if you want the actual facts on quarantining your tank and your fish, as opposed to the hearsay stuff like, yeah, I fed it garlic and the fish got better. I gave it this herbal treatment and it got better. Not true. Okay, so Corey, first, quarantine all the fish coming into your tank. Definitely do that, especially with tangs. They're more prone to carry diseases like ick. Then you need to think about stocking your stocking strategy with your tangs. Ideally, if the tangs are the same family, they're zebrasomas, you want them coming in together. There's going to be your purple tangs, your yellow tangs. You want all them to come in at one time. This way it's all new territory. This is going to increase your chance of them getting along. Now remember, there's no guarantee that they are going to get along. Just because you put them in your tank together, they might get along, they might not. Here's another hint for you, Corey. Using the quarantine is a great time to see if they're going to get along. Something I've done with clients who wanted a purple tang and a couple yellows. Well, we'll get a 55-gallon tank. These are easy to find on Craigslist. You're in Connecticut. I'm sure there's one in the state somewhere. There's probably several of them in your town or close by. A lot of people in the freshwater world sell off their 55-gallon tanks. You can usually either get them for free or not a lot of money. You can take the 55-gallon tank, get some egg crate, also known as light diffuser, trim it down to divide the tank in half, put that in the tank, and you can put, let's say, your purple tang or your sailfin tang on one side, put your other tang, like your yellow tangs, on the other side. You leave the divider there, that way they can see each other. If they hate each other's guts, they're probably going to try to attack one another, or one is going to try to attack the other fish. Through the divider, you can go, yeah, I don't think this is going to work so well. Now, it might be that after a couple days they settle down. If that's the case, then what you do is you pull the divider out. Now, don't just pull the divider out and then disappear. You need to pull it out and then watch. Maybe you have to kind of peek around the corner, but see how they do. At first, they might swim around and check each other out. Maybe there's a little bit of aggression, but it should die down very quickly. This is a great reason. Another reason I love quarantine is quarantine tank is a great place to work with your fish. It's very easy to catch fish in a quarantine tank. It's very easy to section off a quarantine tank, especially, Corey, you wanted to put several tanks in your tank. One, it's going to give you a chance to watch them for disease. If they get ick, you can treat it very easily in a quarantine tank. Two, you can watch their behavior. Like I just talked about, see if they're going to get along before you put them in your tank and have a major problem. And it's also going to let you work with the fish, get them used to you, get them used to what you feed, your regime. That way they're settled in and gives them the best chance possible to do well in your tank. Great question. Corey, good luck with that. Let me know how it works out. If you want to start with a more calm tang, more chill type of tang, Corey, again, look at those coli tangs. Great looking fish. Usually they're very, very chill. All right. Michael writes in from Camden County, Georgia. Don't know where that is, but hey, Michael, go dogs, right? He says, thank you for all the information you put out. It's helped me a lot. Thank you for reading. Thanks for the shout out, Michael. I have a 120-gallon mixed reef community tank. If you ran into hard financial times and cannot afford to do the recommended weekly and monthly servicing, what would be the best course of action? Would it be best to sell off all your corals of fish or just do smaller water changes, clean your filters more, and extend carbon and phosphate use? All right, great question there, Michael. Certainly everyone's had tough financial times in their life. I've certainly been there as well. 125-gallon tank. The good news is, Michael, that's not an overly large system. Now, that's a nice size, but in terms of servicing your tank, it's not going to take all that much to do it. It doesn't have to cost you a bunch of money. If you did a 5% weekly water change, that's going to be about, let's say 6.5-ish gallons. If you did 5 gallons a week, that might cost you 25 cents on RODI water and maybe $5 worth of salt. So if you wanted to back off on that and do it once a month, you could do that. You could do a once a month 20% water change. And it's also going to depend partially on how heavily your tank is. If you don't have a lot of fish in there, you might be able to get away with no water changes or a once a month 5% water change. If you got lots of fish, you're probably going to need to do your water changes more regularly. Would you sell off your corals? I wouldn't necessarily jump into that. If your corals are doing well and they're growing, you might be able to frag off your corals and sell them and make a little bit of money to support yourself. I've certainly done this in hard times. If you have a little bit of a money machine, that would be your reef tank that's growing well. Cut up some corals. If you're part of the local reef club, you can sell them off and put a little change in your pocket. Look, when you're in financial times, even 20 bucks out of nowhere can be a godsend. It can sometimes let you go eat dinner out for once as opposed to eating Vienna sausages because that's all you have. Also, in terms of cleaning your filters, that's not going to hurt. Certainly, I mean, cleaning a filter shouldn't cost you any money. Extend your carbon and phosphate remover use. Something that you can do, Michael, again, this is where you got to watch your tank and see what works. Your tank might not be heavily stocked. It might be pretty clean by nature. You might be able to back off your carbon swapping, your activated carbon swapping, for those of you that don't know, and your phosphate removing media. I've had clients' tanks where we did a little bit of an experiment. Like, let's let it go for 2 months and see what happens to the phosphates, and let's see what happens to the tank. It was fine. I know other people, so if they miss one change of their phosphate media, instantly they start having problems. So Michael, watch your tank. You're going to know your tank. See what you can kind of tweak and get away with a little bit. If you're not overstocked, you're going to be able to have a lot more fudge factor with that. You're going to have a lot more leniency on if this is going to work or if that's going to work. All right, great question, Michael. Hope things improve for you. Certainly, tight financial times are not a lot of fun. All right, Jim from Fossil Creek Studio in Severance, Colorado. Fossil Creek Studio. I'll have to check that one out. Sounds like it could be something cool, especially if it's in Severance, Colorado. I know where that is, Jim. Used to be a Colorado myself. Mark, he says, first, thank you for all the knowledge you provide for free to all of us reefers. Hey, you're welcome. I started off 6 months ago, all wrong as in caps. I bought some food with your ad in it. That's the P, Mice's Food. Found your site and bought your book and said, oh crap. Things are better now, even though it's an old 130 gallons, thanks to your guidance. Glad the book was helpful, Jim. Thanks for your support. So Jim's question, I have never heard anyone talk about this maintenance on RODI and mixing tanks. My mixing tank is getting residue on the inside. I'm not sure if I should worry about it and if I should. Suggestions on cleaning it. All right. Hoping to get a 185 gallon deep soon. I'm assuming he's saying deep dimension tank, and getting in on the virtual tank build program. We'd love to see you there, Jim. Back to your question about maintenance on RODI and mixing tanks. All right, a lot of people ask me this. RODI water, it doesn't necessarily have to be agitated. Look, if you keep a cover on it and try to keep the dust and dirt out, that's usually enough. Now, some people wrote in with me, say they work in semiconductor factories, and they recommend agitating your RODI unit. If you got an extra power head that's clean, ideally new, you want to put in there, certainly go ahead and do it. Me, I never agitate my RODI water. It sits in a container with a lid on it, so I keep the dirt out. Now keep in mind, you get RODI water, it's going to have 0 TDS. And there's an equilibrium in nature. If something's very, very clean, dirt is automatically going to want to be gravitated. It's going to tend to suck up dirt, other things in the atmosphere, just due to gradients. So if you fill up your container and the TDS goes to 1 or 2, I'm not surprised. That's probably going to happen. Don't be so surprised about that. If it's getting up there around 10, okay, then you probably have an issue. Now, Jim, in terms of saltwater mixing tanks, that's another story. You do want to keep that water agitated at all times, especially if you're using a reef type salt, reef crystals, tropic marine bioactive, Red Sea Pro salt. Some of those salts can include organic things, organic molecules, different types of organics in there. Once they get wet, they become salt water. Well, they can die off, they can cause problems if the water is not agitated. Now, the residue that you're seeing is probably this biofilm, these organics that are building up. That's natural. Any part of having a saltwater mixing tank is at some point in time, you need to take it out, clean it up to get rid of that junk that's in there. It's just part of it. It's a natural thing to do. You can scrub it down with tap water, use vinegar. I use Hydor Magic Clean as another cleaner that you can use. All those things will clean up the container, rinse it out, and then you can put it back into service. So RODI water, Jim, don't agitate that. Salt water, keep it agitated. Keep both of those covered. That will help keep the dirt out. All right. Let's see here. This is from Ron. Ron says, I have bad hair algae. Sorry about that, Ron. We've been doing water changes weekly. The tank has been up for 3+ years, and it's a 110-gallon tank. When we upgraded from 2 tanks, we saved the sand, and I wonder if the sand needs to be cleaned or replaced. How often do you clean your sand? Do you clean it all? All right, Ron. Very common mistake people make when it comes to upgrading and moving tanks. Talk about this in the moving and upgrading tank guide. There's lots of junk that's going to be in your sand, even if your tank is very new. You'd be surprised at how much detritus gets caught in your sand. Even if your sand looks very white, your tank has low nutrients, still when you break it down, there's going to be lots of detritus in there. You take all that sand, take it out, move it to a new tank, you're going to be stirring that stuff up, given an opportunity to get up in your water column. It can cause nitrates and phosphate problems. A lot of people write me, they say, hey, I moved the tank, I reused the sand, now I have nitrate problems. I'm like, yeah, one, it's not uncommon when you move a tank to have nitrate problems. Two, not surprised considering the person wrote in and said they reused the same sand. So Ron, here's a hint. Put in new sand in the new tank if you want to save a handful or cup or two of the old sand to help seed the new sand. It's not going to hurt, but I certainly recommend that you put in new sand when you move the tank. Now in your case, you've already set up the tank. So what to do now? One, you need to be watching your nutrient levels very carefully. So if you have high nutrient levels, it's probably going to be adding to your bad hair algae problem. Now it might be that your nutrient levels were high. Now they've come back down low and you still have that algae problem. Look, dealing with an algae outbreak is not fun. In the algae guide, I trashed a tank just to deal with it myself, to go through it. It takes time. Sometimes it can take 6 months to battle an algae outbreak. Keeping your nutrients low is one of the first things I recommend that you're doing, so watch your nutrients. If you still have high nutrients in the new tank, it's going to be hard to fight an algae outbreak when you have a high nutrient problem. So doing water changes, adding phosphate, removing media, those type things, that's going to be an important thing to do. Now in terms of cleaning the sand, probably at this point, since you've moved all the sand over into the new tank, these junk that's in there is mostly got up into the water column. Personally, I don't clean my sand bed, I leave it be. I have a cleanup crew to do the job for me. If you want to start doing it, Ron, you can. I recommend you take about a 6x6 square area, do it in that area. Don't go through and plow through and tear up all your sand bed. That can put more stuff up into the water column and cause issues with your tank. So good luck with that. Let me know how it goes. Keep in mind when you're battling that algae outbreak, it's going to take time. Hang in there, keep battling it, keep your tank clean. In time, things should get better. And congrats on the tank move. All right, let's go. We got time for one more question here. Let's see who's got a quick question. Let me see here. Let me just jump through here. This question comes from Angela, who's in Australia. Ooh, northwest, north-south Wales. Awesome. Hello, Angela, from the other side of the earth. I'm up here and you're down there. She says, I'm running my tank on bore water. Don't know what bore water is. I'm assuming that's well water. Hang on just a sec. I gotta Google and see what bore water is. Have not heard of that term. Just a second. I'm betting it's well water, but it sounds like that is a Aussie term. That or else I'm just living in a rock and here in Tennessee. Bore water has been drawn from... Yes, okay, so bore water is another name for well water. There you go, you learn something every single day. She says, I'll be switching to fresh rainwater soon. Was wondering if that means I could get away with not having to buy an RODI unit. All right, Angie. So, I like running tanks with RODI units for lots of reasons. One of them is you don't know what's coming in on your water. Now you said you're switching to fresh rainwater. Hopefully, you might mean fresh and that it's just fallen and you're collecting it. I don't know if you're in a major municipal area. There can be lots of things in the air. Even if you're in a remote area, there can be stuff up in the air like industrial fallout. There's nothing that's going to tell you that it's in the water. Like if you're on a city water, look, their job is to monitor that water quality, make sure that the water that's coming out is still clean. Like you had with your well water, you might have monitored that a little bit. You're going to know if something gets in there. Even then though, you're probably not going to know until you start seeing issues with your tank. Also with the rainwater, I don't know how you're collecting it. Like if it's running off your roof, is your roof that clean? Are there other type of metals that might be in the roof or in the gutter system that can cause problems in your tanks? The point is there's lots of unknowns here, Angie, that I would like to reduce. So running an RODI unit is one way to do that. I would recommend it. You just don't know. And look, as much money as you're probably going to put into your saltwater tank, not buying a $200 or $300 RODI unit seems kind of crazy to me. It's like owning a Ferrari and you're like, no, I'm not going to have insurance. No, forget it. There's no reason to. It's like, it's a small investment to protect a much bigger investment. Certainly with you not using treated water, city water that's pretty consistent, you want to reduce those number of unknowns. The RODI water can help. Might be worthwhile to buy some kind of water sterilizing unit as well. I'm not an expert on using rainwater for drinking water and using it for uses around your house. If bottom line is, Angela, go ahead and get in that RODI unit. I think it's worthwhile. You just never know. The last thing you want to do is have a problem and not know about it for a long time because it got into your water source. You started doing small water changes, things started building up in your tank. What probably will happen if that starts going on, you'll be like, why is my tank not doing well? And you start looking at all these other places, as opposed to thinking about, oh, 6 months ago maybe, I switched over to rainwater, maybe that could be the problem. So good luck with that. Hope that helps. Enjoy Aussie. You guys are coming into the summer season there. Definitely jealous. Enjoy it. Enjoy the beach for me. Go on the Great Barrier Reef if you can get a chance up there. I know it's a little bit far from New South Wales, but hey, have at it. Enjoy it. Thanks everyone for being part of the Midday Monday question and answer session. Again, virtual tank build program is closing down tomorrow night. MrSaltwaterTank.com/virtual tank build. That's Tuesday night at midnight. It is closed. I'm not going to be running it again until 2015. And here's a little hint for you. If you're in the program, it's going to be ending right about the time those Black Friday sales come on board. So you're going to know exactly what to buy, more importantly, what not to buy, so your tank gets set up in the best way possible. All right, everyone, thanks for being here. Have a great rest of your week. I will catch you later. Again, I'll be in Orange County, October 25th, Reef-a-Palooza, then Desert Frag Fest, November 1, and then Birmingham at Reef Life, November 8th. Have a great rest of your day.